Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever you are in the world at this moment, or whatever time it is in the world that you are in. I'd like to welcome you to the video, which is going to explain to you about the course syllabus. So, I'm Nick. I'm going to be your instructor for the next 8 weeks of this online course. So, just to make sure that you're in the right course, this is World History 2. We're going to be looking at the Reformation to the present. It's an accelerated 8 week course, and it starts today, which is March 9th, right? March 9th. So I'd like to welcome all of you. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to just cover the syllabus and what you can expect about the course, its major requirements, and some of the best ways to get in contact with me since this is a fully online asynchronous course. Okay, so no, we are not going to be meeting at a certain time during the week or in any fashion like that. However, I will make myself available in terms of if you'd like to meet via FaceTime or via Zoom. So that we can get to know each other because I always want to make sure that you have availability to connect with me because I never want you to feel like you're totally doing this on your own. I want you to have a great experience. Even though it is an online course, I still want you to make sure that you can know that I am present in your attainment of this information, the retainment of this information, as well as its application. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So you can see there on the beginning part of the syllabus, which will be on Canvas as well, that that is my name. I have a doctorate. My doctorate is actually in philosophy, but I have a couple of degrees. One is actually in African American studies, and I have another one in history. I was born and raised in California. Left California. I went to UC Berkeley as an undergrad and a graduate student. I left there in 2015 after working for a couple of years, and then I basically have lived throughout the South, everywhere from New Orleans through Charlotte. So think of all the major cities. So we're talking like Atlanta, Columbia, Birmingham, cities like that. And this is actually the farthest north that I've ever lived. So Baltimore. This is my second year living in the city. I work at Johns Hopkins, but I also love to take any teaching opportunities. And Dr. Redmond, who many of you may know as the dean or one of the deans at BCCC, he asked me if I could teach this course just this past Friday, or was it Saturday? I think it was Friday or Saturday, one of those two. And so I said, sure. So I'm actually building the course out as we go along. And so I know that it's 8 weeks, so I'm actually having to condense stuff in. But let me just give you some of the objectives and everything else that we're going to cover. Oh, sorry. So you can see right there, that is my email address and that is my cell phone number. So make sure you lock it in. There is nothing wrong with you sending me a text message. Text messages work great. Why? Because let's say that an assignment hasn't been graded, or there's like a problem with the due date, or something closed, or I don't know, you just have a question about an assignment. Feel free to text me. Not that I don't answer my email, but text message is pretty quick. Why? Because we always have our phones with us. If I don't answer immediately, it probably means that I'm either teaching or I might be meeting with a student, but I will certainly get back to you. I know that all of us have different schedules, so don't feel like you can only contact me between 9 to 5. But if you text me at like 3 in the morning, considering that I am pretty old, probably won't be able to answer it until I wake up, but I will certainly get back to you as soon as I can. So let's talk about the objectives of this course. So this is world history, and world history from the period of the Reformation, which is roughly around 1520 up until about our present period. That's a lot of information to cover. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, so how exactly do we go about covering all of world history for the last 600 years to try to figure out what are we going to cover, right? And how are we going to do it in 8 weeks? Well, the way that we're going to do it is that I am going to rely on focusing on one theme. Okay. And the theme for this course is going to be looking at rights. Okay. Individual rights, human rights, rights of various, groups. And so we're going to be looking at that through various events that have occurred over the last 6 centuries in our world. Okay. And so, yes, am I going to be covering big ideas and always trying to give you a sense of relevancy in terms of how it has meaning for your everyday experience or the world in which you have come to understand forever how old you are, if you are 18 or 22 or 45, whatever the case may be? We're going to be looking at that. And so, what I think is very important for us in any history course, but in particular in this one, is that I want you to try to understand why exactly is the world the way that it is today, right? Um, Barbara Christensen, a very famous historian, once said, "History is lived now." Right? And what she meant by that was is that everything in our own contemporary experience is the result of something that has happened in the past, a decision that a group of people made, a moment in time, something that happened, and this is where we are in this moment. And so everything that is historical has relevance because we are actually the living embodiment of it. We are living in the consequences of those decisions, right? And so everything that we do in this moment has consequences for the future. But it's very important for us to understand because history is stories, it is experiences, it is the narrative that exists out there. But we should be very clear that not all those narratives are told, not all those narratives are told equally or even discussed or even presented, right? Stories and the narrative of history is often told by the victors, right? The people who are in charge. But what we're going to do is, as we look at these stories, as we look at these historical events, as we look at the people who are a part of these experiences, we're going to really question that idea of like, well, who does the telling? Right? Where do these stories come from? Where do these experiences come from? And so we'll always be critical about that, whether it's in our discussions or our papers that we're going to be completing over the 8 weeks. But in terms of understanding rights, right? The expansion of rights, how individual rights have been come to be understood as we know them today, as we experience them today, why exactly we feel that many of our rights are being limited, right? Why exactly do we feel we're in this period of like contraction where we've been in periods where there's been more of an expansion of rights for groups of people, and now it seems like there's a contraction of those rights, right? We're going to look at all of that. And so we're going to be exposing, the fight for these rights. Who were the people? What were the moments? How did these rights get expanded? We're going to look and analyze how ideas of freedom, right? What does it mean to be free? What does that mean in terms of a physical experience? What does it mean in terms of a conscientious? And we're also going to look at how individual rights, how they still persist to this day and how people continue to fight for them. How even in moments like our own, where we feel this contraction, where we feel this fight or this need to try to reassert the rights that we once had or that we feel that we still have or that we need to be reminded that we have, right? Why exactly do we go through those periods? And so we're going to be looking at all that. Because remember, what we are experiencing in this moment, especially in our own contemporary space, right? As people who are living in the United States under, the current presidential administration of President Trump, this experience is not necessarily something that is completely unheard of, right? It's not something that is foreign. Like it's not the first time that this has ever happened, but it is something that's new to many of us because many of us haven't lived in other areas where this has been a commonplace experience, right? And so we're going to look at that. And so I invite all of you to bring your personal experiences, your positions, your awarenesses, your learning, to our discussions, to your papers, to these assignments, because I would love to hear how you are resonating with the ideas that I present and how you are finding meaning with them as you think about how they impact you. Okay? So let's take a look at the expectations. Definitely, we want to make sure that we have respect. Respect for each other, respect for the ideas. It is okay to disagree, right? The worst thing that you can have in any classroom is homogenized thinking, right? Everybody agrees with this. Everybody understands that, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you just have to disagree to disagree or just want to just, be somebody who is a contrarian. But I want you to present ideas that, a lot of the things that we're going to be covering are difficult. There's not one necessarily an answer, right? There's just ways of thinking about it. And so, definitely want you guys to be respectful of the way that you're coming at these ideas. Second, opinions versus positions, right? We've all got opinion, multiple opinions on various things. But I'm not really interested in you guys bringing your opinions. I want you to bring your positions. I want you to take a position on various questions or ideas, and I want you to bring in evidence to support your position on that. Okay? Because we're going to disagree, we're going to engage with each other, and we're going to have perspectives that are different. But if we can look at each other's positions and effectively judge the evidence, effectively judge the argument, then we might be able to not just only enhance our own position, right? But we may be able to expand it. Maybe it'll even change. Who knows? But we won't be able to do that if everybody just says, well, this is my opinion and that's it. And I don't have to try to validate it with any sort of evidence or any sort of, nuance. Okay. And then third, the community, right? Definitely want to make sure that, we are keeping an academic community that is respectful, that is supportive and engaging, right? I want you to enjoy this course. I want you to enjoy your experience in this course. We all have our reasons for taking it, right? Many of you may be taking this course because it is one of those requirements that, you have to fulfill in order to get, the associate's degree. Maybe you're taking it because of an interest. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither, right? But whatever it is, let's make sure that we create a community where we all can feel welcome, right? That we all can feel that, what we have to contribute is something of value. Okay. Required text, resources, and readings. So everything will be on Canvas. No, there is no book that you have to buy for this. I believe in, posting all of the material up for you. So I will make sure that I find that and put it onto Canvas. I am in the process of doing that at this moment. So it'll be populating as it goes along. And I'll always let you know when something new comes up or if I need you to pay attention to this versus that, I'll always let you know. But you don't have to buy anything. So there you go. Save some money. In terms of the assignments, here they are. We have a self-introduction and a peer response, right? So you're going to introduce yourselves, you're going to put a picture up, tell me a little bit about your background, and then you're going to respond to one of your peers, okay? And that's going to be due this coming Sunday at 11:59. Mostly everything is going to be due on a Sunday, or it's always going to be due at 11:59. I may change it to like a Monday or a Tuesday just to give you guys some more time. But I'm not really like one of those individuals that's like, oh, it has to be in by 11:59. Like, am I really reading it at 1 a.m.? No. So there's just we'll know that there's some flexibility there. But because you guys have other things going on, you're in other classes, you have jobs, maybe you're taking care of kids or family members or whatever the case may be. Just try to stick with the schedule as much as possible. So there are 4 discussions total, 150 points each, and there are 3 papers. And then there's a course evaluation. Okay. There is no midterm, there is no final exam. This is an 8-week course. I really want you guys to focus on writing and getting your argument and engaging with the ideas. Multiple choice tests never really get at the big impact and the so what's of the discussion questions in the papers, right? And when I say paper, it's not a long paper, y'all. It's like, 600 words, 800 max, right? We're not talking about 1,500 words here. We're not trying to write dissertations, okay? It's not that serious. I really just want you guys to get to the crux of the idea. Okay. And the assignments will be all up on Canvas. Okay. So I'll always put up the directions. I'll put the question up. I'll put maybe a video or, an image, something for you to look at. The critical analysis papers will always have choices, right? So you'll have like maybe 2 or 3 questions to choose from. You'll always choose one. Okay. You don't have to answer all 3. Discussion questions, it's usually just one question. Maybe I'll put 2 and you can choose one, especially with the amount of information that we're covering. So it might be necessary, because a week, you might be covering like 200 years, or you might be covering like four different continents, right? So, these are the different things that we need to, be able to, consider. And so that's it. Those are the assignments. So it's out of 2,000 points. You can see the breakdown here, like right there, class discussions, critical analysis papers. This is how the grades will be broken down. Um, I don't foresee any of you guys having any real problems with this. But if you have any problems with the assignments, just text me. Just, let's get on a phone call. Let's do a FaceTime. Let's do a Zoom call. Let's just figure it out, right? I always want to make sure that you guys have the ability to ask questions, that you can ask them in real time, and that we can just get it done, right? Okay. We're just trying to get you guys one step closer to finishing a class, getting that degree, moving on to the next manifestation of experience, in your future. Okay. The calendar will also be on Canvas. Now, as you can see, readings and media, it says see Canvas, but what I put here is for the next 8 weeks, I put what we're going to be covering in terms of the topics. Okay. So this coming week, we're going to look at the Protestant Reformation, scientific revolution, exploration, and conquest. Is that a hell of a lot? Oh my gosh, you bet you. Like it's a ton. But I'm going to be focusing on big themes from each of those. Okay. So we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details, unfortunately. But if you want to talk about the nitty-gritty details, if you want to be able to ask some of those questions or have those conversations with me or with others, with your peers, we certainly can do that, okay? But we're just focusing on big themes here, big ideas, right? Big concepts, especially as they have to do with like individuals and freedoms and rights, opportunities, the definement of who has these freedoms and who doesn't, why do certain people have them and why don't others, right? All of these different categories we're going to be looking at. Next week, we'll be looking at self-determination. So we'll be looking at the Enlightenment, the Revolution in America, and the Revolution in France. Third week, we're going to be looking at technology, so Industrial Revolution and the abolition of slavery. So we're going to be moving from one area of physical labor that is completely and utterly and totally tied to an economic system to one that begins to move into more factory-based production, right? So we're moving from the capacity of total human labor to somewhat of human labor, right? And so we're going to look at those aspects in terms of how does that change in terms of this idea of freedom? What exactly does that mean? Then we're going to get into wars and revolutions and how that has to deal with human rights. So we're going to look at World War I, World War II, the Russian Revolution. Then week 5, we will be looking at decolonization and the rights of others, civil rights movements, feminist and identity movements. And I see that I forgot a comma there, so let me put that in there. Ta-da. And then what we'll do in week 6 is we're going to look at globalization, human rights, current rights. Week 7 will be rights in the age of artificial intelligence. What exactly does that mean in terms of the rights as they are determined through our various technological formations? And so we'll look at that from week 2 all the way to week 7. And then week 8, we will be looking at the resistance, the expansion, the contraction of thinking on rights as we move forward. Okay? And that's it. And then we're done. Can you believe it? We'll be done by the beginning of May, right? Everything will be due on the last day, 5/6, and then you're done. Pretty cool, huh? Okay. If I make any changes, I'll always let you know, and I'll always give you plenty of time. Never going to give you like, oh, you have 24 hours or something like that. No, you always get a couple days. And so just want to make sure that you know that you are participating. Do every assignment, participate in every discussion, ask questions, engage with each other. Let's make this course, as enjoyable and as rich as possible. Stay professional, but most importantly, don't plagiarize. Okay. I know it is so easy for us to want to use AI. That's really cool. Wonderful. AI isn't going anywhere. It's only going to get more imbued in our everyday experience. But for this course, I want you to really just be able to free yourself from the use of AI and come up with your own thoughts, right? come up with your positions on how this makes you feel. Why do you feel that way? And what is the evidence that is making you feel that way? Right? So let's not use it. Don't use your chat GPTs or, your various other resources and stuff like that to synthesize ideas, because that'll just result in, a zero, and as much as I hate to quote Elon Musk, but he did say something, that was actually, quite true. Humans are underrated. And so we should, allow ourselves to be able to know that it is important for us to be able to determine and evaluate these experiences historically, not a machine. Okay. And so, think about those. Now, of course, if you are having any problems or any other issues, you do have the right to report, the discrimination. But if you're having a problem with the course, please just let me know because I want to make sure that this course is enjoyable for you. I want you to engage and I want you to, have a meaningful experience. Okay? So that's it. That's it. That's the entire course, So I'm gonna post this and then everything else um on Canvas. The lectures will always have me talking. I'll be talking with you through some ideas and stuff like that. So you'll see me a lot, but feel free to lock my phone number in, text me, engage with me, and let's just have a wonderful class. I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you over the next 8 weeks. And yeah, just reach out if you need anything. Looking forward to connecting and reading what you guys are going to be able to do with the first initial posts.